Hi, I'm Paul Camillos and welcome to Shooting the Breeze. Join me and the STB crew for Series 8. Just hit that subscribe button and if you enjoy the pod, share it and give it a like. Before we get into the electrifying WNBL imports from around the globe that are gracing our league, in this week of World Basketball Day that reminds us of the global impact of women's hoops. It's our final podcast for 2025 as we welcome a pod break. So from the STB community to our listeners around the world, Happy New Year and wishing all a safe and happy 2026.
I remember asking Leticia and me here before she went to the Perth Lynx last season, like, what was one of the reasons you decided to go to the WNBL that particular season? And she basically said it's to get better. And players are recognizing that it's a league that if you want to get better, you can go to Australia and work on your craft and, come back better than ever. You talked about Naz Hillman winning sixth player. I remember when she was with Melbourne and Jordan, Canada, and they ran the pick and roll flawlessly. And, they've kind of brought that chemistry and synergy back with them to Atlanta. So there's just so many things like that happening.
Welcome to Shooting the Breeze. I'm Paul Camillos, and in this episode, we're looking at the WNBL so far, and I'm being joined by regular contributors Kerry Waller and M. Palmer, and our US correspondent, Alf Corriette. Welcome to the show, everybody. And just before I get into it, I just want to follow up with everyone just to see what's been happening. So, Kerry, we know there's a few things that have been happening for you. So let's start off with you're more involved in the WNBL now than you were last time we spoke to you.
Yes, I am. I've been contracted by the Lightning, so I'm doing some media and PR stuff with them when I'm not doing my full-time job. So really amazing to be involved, I guess, a little bit more officially and be able to, pour into something that I'm so passionate about and just making sure that the girls get the recognition and the coverage that they deserve.
That's great. And, as we've said before, it's a long walk for you from the day job to the additionally contracted job. Was it like 10 meters or something?
Yeah, absolutely. And it probably helps that Sports College South Australia was last week officially announced as a partner of the Adelaide Lightning as well. So that probably helps as well.
Yeah, no, I noticed that. I noticed that piece of news. That's really good news. And Em, what's been happening in your world?
Not much, just a bit all over the place. Went on a cruise, so that was nice, but no basketball for a week, so that was sad.
No basketball for a week, yeah, that'd be a bit tough.
Very sad.
Look, we're getting into it today, so you could make up for that week.
Yeah.
Okay, now, Alf, I left you for last because I'm sure there's been a lot happening for you because, you're keeping up with hoops globally, including the WNBL. And also, look, I'll call it a slow burn of what's been happening with the WNBA CBA negotiations. I'm sure there's other ways people would probably want to describe it, but we'll stick with slow burn for now. What's been happening, Alf?
Yeah, so it's been an interesting off season thus far. Typically, this is usually my time covering the global scene of basketball, as you mentioned, but then also gearing up for WNBA free agency, which usually will start around January, the preliminary stages. But for those that have been following the WNBA right now, there is technically no new CBA. So right now, the WNBA PA and the league are still in talks to try to see if they can get a CBA done. However, the latest update that we have is that the two sides are still far away on the important things such as revenue sharing, salary commitments, and so forth. And the league and the PA did extend to early January. So we will see what happens if we can get closer to a new CBA. But right now, it's in a bit of a who knows stage.
Yeah, I think it's the 9th of January, so it's like 19 days before the timeline runs out. And yeah, just from what I've been seeing, yeah, saying that they're far apart is, I think, generous. It's almost like East Coast, West Coast.
More so probably the distance between California and Tokyo.
Yeah, I don't think it's. I think there's going to be a lot for us to watch in that space. So, that could well be a pod for the new year, I think. Okay, let's turn to the WNBL, and I want to first talk about the ladder as it stands at the moment. I want to talk about the fact that this ladder is absolutely not what I was expecting to see at this point in the season. There are a few teams that we expected to be up there, Bendigo, Townsville and Perth. Everybody else, it's just not where I expected to see things. First of all, to you, Em, your opinion on, how you see the ladder at the moment.
It's just so interesting. Last pod, we talked a lot about caps and how what a miss we think Zatina was for this team. And since she's been back in, she's just been insane. She's been so good. She's dominated. And now they're fourth with a 50-50 win-loss, which isn't fabulous, but still they're in fourth. She's just got Hanju, who's just a big person in general. You would have seen her at New York. They now have the three dominant bigs, Bendigo with the young ones, but then you've got Bendigo at the top and Iggy Ball Ace. She's hands down MVP in my eyes. She's been so good. And I think that just reflects that the best player is at the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah. Look, I'm surprised by where Southside's now like 2 games behind the Caps, and I didn't expect that. But it is a bit of a logjam. I mean, let's not forget, the Caps went from, I think it was the 7th or 8th to 4th with just 2 wins. So, anything's possible here. Kerry, what's your take on this one?
There's so much. I loved Em's analysis though, because anytime the bigs get some love, I'm all for that. All for that. I think it's a lost art, the big player. And on that, I think we're seeing more of that positionalist game in the WNBL this season. But in terms of the ladder, yeah, it's, like you said, it's a logjam. Things can change literally from game to game. And yeah, great to see the Caps definitely heading towards the middle of the pack rather than the bottom. And of course, Adelaide, I'm biased. I'm here in Adelaide. So great to see Adelaide pushing for that 4th and 5th spot. So yeah, there's so much to unpack there. We could talk about just the ladder for hours, but yeah, like you said, we're seeing those top 2 teams at the top the way we expected. But Perth coming out and beating Townsville was big. And a great result, and no coincidence that happened with Hanju in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, I watched part of that game, and it's literally Hanju is just sitting there. She puts her hands up, just throw it up high enough. Nobody's going to stop that ball, and then she can just drop it in. It's really
it really is. It really is a simple game, isn't it? Like, it's not. It doesn't need to be complicated or hard. It's a simple game. You just got to get that ball in the hole, and if you've got someone that's taller than everyone else, it's easier.
It makes it tough. And Alf, I know you watch the WNBL closely, so I'm curious to get your take on the ladder.
Yeah, no, I think it's been interesting to see how the league has taken shape at this point, where it's still a lot of things are up in the air. You still have your typical teams that will be at the top, the Townsvilles and the Perths, but the one team I was curious about heading into the season was Bendigo, to see where they would be, obviously losing someone like a Sammy Whitcomb and then kind of slotting into her spot Isabel Boulez. But Izzy Boulez has just been on another level, this season. And I think if you're a Bendigo fan, you definitely have to love it. But then possibly if you're an Atlanta Dream fan kind of peeking at what's been going on in WNBL, you're like, ooh, this Isabel Boulez is actually looking pretty good for a later stage draft pick. So, I think the way that's shaped out has been fun to see. And then really like with everybody else, with, the Caps, the Lightning, and everybody vying for it, I think that is kind of what makes the WNBL fun in a sense, in the sense that, with so much basketball left, anything can really happen. And all it really takes is just a big, strong momentum push, kind of like what we've seen with the UC Caps getting Big Z back. Anything can change in an instant.
Yeah, last night we were at the game between Sydney and Townsville, and one of the questions I asked Townsville coach Shannon Seaborn was, it is a tight ladder. At what point do you think you're going to start feeling comfortable? And he was like, I'm not. And I think that's a pretty fair assessment, because when you look at the ladder and you look at the gap, I mean, all you need to do is a few things go a few different ways and it all changes. So who knows? Okay, so look, one of the things that we've been really wanting to talk about is the imports that we've had in the WNBL. And we'll get to that shortly, because I think there's a lot to be spoken about there. But I really quickly want to talk about the coaching situation in the WNBL this season. It's been, let's say, dynamic. Now, Kerry, I'm going to let you sit this one out because of your position with Adelaide. But yeah, this has been a very unique situation. I think it's the first season it is the first season I can remember where two head coaches have changed mid-season. I don't think I've ever seen that happen before. And it's kind of interesting to see, because it's changed the dynamic in amongst the team situations a lot. And I think also the incoming coaches it is a real opportunity for them, but it's also a real challenge in that, you're walking into a team where you're taking over as head coach part or halfway through the season, and you're trying to manage your way through. And I think that also makes things kind of complicated. So, Alf, this is something that happens a little bit more regularly in the US. Be interesting to get your take on this.
I think, to what your point was, it definitely does happen a little bit more frequently, where you will see, like, okay, if a team is performing subpar to expectations, you will see like there's usually a coaching departure or something radical mid-season. Yep. At an NBA level, at a WNBA level, it's happened. But I do vividly remember thinking in my, short time covering the WNBL, that took me aback, because I never realized like that was something that was possible to see coaches leave. But then also it very seemed like in rapid succession that the coaching departures happened, which I think also adds to that layer. Typically, I think American fans may be more used to it, in the sense that, especially like every year, there's always a coaching carousel of sorts now in the WNBA where, coaches are coming in and out. But for the WNBL perspective, yeah, I definitely think it was a big surprise. I think the last time, and even like, I believe it was Adelaide, correct me if I'm wrong, had a coaching change where they brought in McInnes. And I think that even like that was a big shock when it happened. So, to see multiple coaches in the WNBL leave, it's been something to see.
Yeah. First of all, if you hadn't made the changes at that point in time in the season, you couldn't make the changes, because it would be getting too far into the season. So I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see how it's going to play out. I mean, so far, what we've seen with Aja, there's been a win. The team's been knocking on the door of a couple other wins. Sydney, certainly, we're seeing a different attitude. I'd be curious to see how it plays out over the rest of the season. So, Em, I'd like to hear what your thinking is.
Yeah, with the Renee Garlick, now head coach of the Flames, we've seen a switch to the young ones. Ones that have been through not only the Future Flames program, but also her NBL1 team. And I've scouted against her the past 2 years, and you really notice the shift, and the offense is a lot more fluid. You can see the young ones a bit more penetration. So it's just now connecting that all together, I think. I think hopefully we're seeing a new era where it is a bit more geared towards the young ones. We've seen usually a heavy veteran Sydney team, but now it's kind of changed with that new perspective. And then Tom Gullip, her husband, has been on that assistant bench with her, helping her through that, I'm sure. And then Max Monk is the other assistant coach, and he's very defensive focused. So I'm sure it's a great balance for him and Renee, one who's so amazing on that offensive side, one who can focus on the defensive side, and Tom kind of just understanding Renee and helping fit that all together. Like we saw Zoe Miller get her first points. We saw Ruby Perkins take to the stage, and it's just so exciting to see those young ones come through.
Yeah, I know. Being at the game yesterday, I spent a little bit of time just watching Tom and Renee and the whole coaching staff working together. It was a really interesting dynamic. I thought the way they respectfully queried the officials in relation to some of the choices was great. Look, seriously, it was entertaining to watch, but you could tell they were doing it the right way because the refs were not getting annoyed at all. But it was just an entertaining thing to watch. I don't know if it got picked up on the telecast or not. You can see this is kind of they're finding their feet as a coaching staff pretty quickly. So let's get into the larger conversation, which is about the imports, because I think this season, and we say it every year, this season we've seen the best imports we've ever seen. And I think the biggest one, of course, is, in more than one way, is Hanju for the Perth Lynx. But the WNBL has always attracted great imports. Each year we say it, but if you look back, it's always been a destination. We've had Naz Hillman, who played for the Boomers and the Flyers and picked up WNBA's Sixth Player of the Year, is going to be part of Unrivaled. Veronica Burton, WNBL champ last year, and I think the WNBA's most improved player. Jackie Young, Perth Lynx MVP in 22. We've also had Kia Nurse and Jordan Canada, who've both previously been named WNBL MVPs. And, one that I think people forget about because it was so early in her career is we also had Sophie Cunningham play here for the Melbourne Boomers. And look, we'll take it as a given that she learnt to play hard and physical the way we've seen down here in Australia. So I'm really curious to hear from you guys how you see the import situation in the WNBL this season, your general ideas and thoughts about it. Throw it over to you, Alf, to start, because you've had opportunity to see some of these players up live and in person in WNBA.
Yeah, with the WNBL, I think it's part of a larger shift that's happening with basketball, where you're seeing this big globalization of the game to where now leagues like the WNBA are recognizing the importance, and players are recognizing that if they want to get the reps that they may not necessarily get in season, there are quality leagues abroad, whether it be, Europe and the EuroLeague, whether it's Asia and China with the WCBA. And the WNBL has become one of the destinations for players to get those reps in the off season. And I think you're also seeing teams recognize that there's also quality domestic talent that is in leagues like the WNBL when you look at recent draft picks like Nadia Potch and Isabel Borlase. So I think you're seeing kind of a shift where the WNBA and America is looking at the WNBL as, these are also viable overseas leagues. But then WNBL is also looking like we can actually have talent that can play at America's highest level. And with a lot of these imports, it's interesting because I've even asked, I remember asking Leticia Mehier before she went to the Perth Lynx last season, like, what was one of the reasons you decided to go to the WNBL that particular season? And she basically said it's to get better. And players are recognizing that it's a league that if you want to get better, you can go to Australia and work on your craft and, come back better than ever. You talked about Naz Hillman winning sixth player. I remember when she was with Melbourne and Jordan Canada and they ran the pick and roll flawlessly. And, they kind of brought that chemistry and synergy back with them to Atlanta. So there's just so many things like that happening where I think it's just great for the game as a whole.
I'm going to throw one thing out here, which is not strictly import related. Do you think that there's a potential that this could start to get impacted if the CBA for the WNBA starts looking at, well, you don't play in another league. How's that going to sit?
Well, I think where it gets interesting is I feel there's such a talent pool of, let's say, domestic American players that I feel they're always looking to work on their craft. So you have obviously the WNBA caliber players that, can move overseas. But I think if the league does trend in that direction, you do have players that, may want to be part of that roster, may want to be part of those spots. And they're looking at it as, okay, if I can't immediately play here, why not go abroad and, work on my craft? And I think what that does in turn is that creates just a stronger overall pool of talent that you have globally, to where, now it's not necessarily the WNBA players, it's not necessarily W players you have to necessarily import. You can import some of those that are, fighting their way in, and they can come to Australia and work just as well.
That's so great. We'd be lucky to have them. I think the WNBL and Australian basketball is so gritty that we always love we love an underdog story, and those players always come in, like you said, they're trying to make their way, they're trying to get that position. So yeah, I think that's a really exciting proposition also.
Yeah, I think someone who was like that was Shug Sutton. She was the last draft pick in either the 22 or the 23 draft class, didn't make a team, came over, played for Townsville, played really well, and now she's back in Washington and she's doing her thing. She's a confident point guard. She got picked up for Unrivaled. And it's just nice that even if you don't get picked up, like Serena Sundell this season, RIP for the knee, they've come over, they've worked on it, and they go back with confidence because Australia can give them those reps, because even some of our star players go and play in Europe, like Beck Allen has, Sammy Whitcomb currently is, Alana Smith, Chloe Bibby. Like, there are holes that can be filled by these young WNBA players where they can come and develop. Like, Mackenzie Holmes is just dominating. And my parents spoke to her. They ran into her, walked up to her one game, asked how she was loving it. Big Seattle Storm fans. And she goes, "Oh, I'm loving it." Which is great. We just want them to come over and love Australia and keep coming back like Mercedes Russell did, or go back and continue dominating in the WNBA like Veronica Burton this year.
For sure. And I think, that's also helped the WNBL, because when players or fans of teams back here in the United States, they see a Veronica Burton playing at a high level, they see Naz Hillman playing at a high level. You can think of even Ari McDonald and Jackie Young after their tenures in the WNBL. They see them playing at such a high level and they wonder, well, what were kind of some of the factors behind, these leaps? And then once they hear, the players talk about, oh, it was during my time in Australia, they're like, oh, okay, what is happening over here? I need to check out what's happening in this particular league. And I can honestly say that it's starting to grow traction, where I see a lot of fans, they also want to take an active interest in following the WNBL, not just to see players that they're fans of, but also see what are some of the shifts and what are some of the things happening in the WNBL that's allowing so many players to come over here and succeed at that WNBA level.
Yeah, and I think another combination is, like you said, with the Jordan Canada and Naz Hillman, you get to kind of come over with your friends. Like we saw it, Jackie Young and Marina Mabry playing together, college teammates, where they came over, they dominated, they scored a lot of points, and then they went back over and did the same thing in America.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on the connection piece. There's always a connection piece, right? Even if it's once or twice removed, there's usually a connection there. I also think it's a huge compliment to our coaches. That's some recognition, and hopefully in the future we see that crossover and they get some opportunities in the WNBA. Because, we've got some amazing coaches here. Obviously, Kennedy Kariyama, Shannon Seaborn. There's obviously a lot more, but those are probably the two that I think of at the moment that really put in that time and the effort, not just with their team, but with the individuals, and have really developed some players and given them confidence.
Oh, indeed. And I think, it's funny you mentioned that because I remember when Ami here went down to Perth. I think this was the season after Ari McDonald had her big run. And then once, fans of, me here, just because of the South Carolina system, saw that she was performing at a high level, you had fans in the States that actively wanted to take an interest into learning more about Ryan Petrick and seeing, like what is it about his type of game? What is it about his type of brand of basketball that's allowing players to flourish? And, I remember there was like a brief debate on Twitter, like, oh, like, can one of these teams hire him in the WNBA?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
it definitely works itself out to where, it's not just the players that are, helping the recognition of the WNBL, but the coaches as well are also starting to get their little bit of foothold here in the States.
Yeah, and I think the same with like Paul Goris, who's been an assistant at the Atlanta Dream, who drafted Nadia Poch and Isabel Borlace, which I don't think is any coincidence that they drafted two Australians. But even now with the Toronto Tempo, they could possibly pick one of them. Like, especially I think Izzy Borlace. Like, why would Sandy not want to pick the young gun that she picks for the Opals? Like, why wouldn't you want that? So I think it's fun for that aspect. Like even Lucy Olsen saying, oh, I came over because Jade Melbourne told me that this was a fun league. Like just things like that. And they're not even playing together. Like, but they go, oh, they said it was a good league, so I'm going to play with them.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And you talk about it, it's really the connections, and that's how it helps grow. And that's part of that globalization of the game. And even Lucy Olsen to come to a team like Townsville, and she's able to provide at a quality level. She's not just lost in the shuffle. She's also putting her active contributions for a Townsville team that already has enough depth when you think of players like Mila Soa and Courtney Woods and Abby Ellis and Lauren Cox. Like she's also in the mix with them. So it's definitely great to see what's been happening with a lot of the imports coming over.
Yeah, and just continuing on that Townsville train, being able to bring Lucy off the bench. Like sometimes, like Mackenzie Holmes has been thrown in to the deep end and completely thrived. But I also think it's nice to see the flip where we see Lucy Olsen be able to come in and work off the bench, and she's no stranger to scoring. That's why she transferred to Iowa. She was Caitlin Clark 2.0 basically, but she gets to go in. Sometimes she'll play 20 minutes because Courtney Woods has 40 points, but then the next game she'll play 30 minutes because she has 40 points. And I think it's so nice that she doesn't have that pressure on her and can ease into that system, which is so dominant at the moment.
No, agreed. And I think even with like players like Lucy Olsen, we're seeing even more, you can call it quote unquote role players on the W side of things that may not necessarily get the minutes, but they're coming in and they're having a fantastic run. I mean, one name that you can mention that I think has been probably a big surprise is Sanaya Fagan, just because of what she's doing that we typically haven't necessarily seen in such a high volume at South Carolina and with the Sparks. We knew that she was a quality defender. She can block shots, she can protect the rim. But when you're seeing things like the mid-range jumpers that she's taking, the turnaround jumpers, extending her range out and knocking three-pointers at a relatively consistent volume. I actually looked this up, but in just her short WNBL play thus far, she has more three-point makes and attempts than her South Carolina and Sparks career combined. So I think that just shows you like how much, like the impact that she's making right away. And I think for her to get those quality reps and for her to build that confidence with an Adelaide team that also has a WNBA caliber player in Steph Talbot, who did play with the New York Liberty, and also younger domestic players like a Dallas Luffridge, who's also a quality guard in her own right, to really get that best of both worlds of playing alongside WNBA caliber talent, but also great domestic talent in a physical league has definitely helped her out.
Yeah, she's definitely a confidence player. It was interesting that you mentioned confidence. she has just got better literally every game. I think her confidence lifted when her mum got here as well to Adelaide, which was really nice. I got to talk to her mum, Sherry. She was amazing. You know, her mum and dad had played college basketball. It's in her blood. And it's amazing to see her get that confidence and thrive. And I guess, yeah, is this going to set her up for more of an impact in the WNBA with the Sparks or wherever she lands, you know, next season? So, yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, I was sort of interested that you said, oh, you know, we're seeing more than we expected from her. I'm like, really? Because I was expecting a lot. She was a McDonald's All-American. She was a 5-star recruit. You know, we're seeing, we touched on, I think it was in the preseason, the 3-on-3 experience that her and Serena Sundell brought into the Lightning. You know, she's experienced winning. She's an NCAA champion. So, yeah, I guess I was probably expecting what we're seeing. But, yeah, to see her confidence and her growth just in round 10? In 10 rounds. Yeah, so it's been amazing. And, you know, good person as well. Like, I get it, a yes ma'am, you know. she's so polite. You know, they're just all really enjoying each other and themselves. Yeah, it's great. It's great to see.
Yeah, and I think touching on what you said about Sanaya, when we saw her at South Carolina, yes, she had all of those accolades heading into college, but luckily and unluckily, because she didn't get as much time on the court, she had Aaliyah Boston and Camila Cardozo next to her. So she always played that supporting role to them, kind of as the second big option. So we knew she could distribute. We knew she was a good defender. But I think it's so nice just seeing her offensive game shine, because it's obviously there. Like, if you watch her shoot free throws, her form is beautiful. Like, it's very fluid. So then seeing her translate that to a fluid mid-range, to a consistent three-point shooter, kind of like how Naz Hillman has done. Like, it's nice to see that. You can see that was in there, but now she's given the opportunity because she is the number one option as the big, and not being the distributor to the Aaliyah Bostons and Camila Cardozos of the world.
You know, that's a great point you brought up about Naz, because it really was the WNBL where you saw her perimeter game start to really get that development, where I remember seeing her utilized more for pick and pops and, you know, a lot of the empty corner stuff. And it was just like, okay, now if Naz can now get this consistently over to Atlanta, how does that look? And then, you know, luckily this past season, she gets a coach that, you know, is actually wanting to take perimeter shots, wanting to take those things. So it's like, okay, for Naz, this is what I've been working towards. So now I can, you know, I have the leeway to do what I've been practicing.
I suppose one of the biggest imports we've had in the country, Hanju. I think she is the first Chinese import we've had in the WNBL. She's stated that she's seeing it as a way to get back into the WNBA.
It's been great to see Hanju play at such a high level, you know, right out of the gate, because she is a player that's capable of putting those performances. You know, having the ability to see Hanju play live with the New York Liberty, you knew like one thing that she's going to do is, if she has a size mismatch, it's, you know, it's almost an automatic bucket because of just the length and what she can do. But then also just seeing her fluidity on the court, you know, how she's moving, how she's able to even expand and stretch out to the 3-point line. You know, when you're thinking about a team like Perth that loves, you know, shooting those high volume threes and, you know, spacing the floor and motion. I mean, her gravity in terms of, you know, drawing defenders on the interior or now having to draw them out to the exterior, that opens up so much for players like Annalie Maley, Allie Wilson, Tribatoni, that, you know, she's really that piece that's really helping them, especially in that stretch. And right now they're in the midst of a 3-game stretch where they've won by an average of 19 points per game. So I think, you know, a Perth team that's really been great. Now she's really like kicked them into extra gear, and I think, you know, for that Perth team, they want to win, and I think, you know, with a player like Hanju, they have that piece.
Sorry, I'm gritting my teeth because they play Adelaide tonight. I'm like, oh my god.
it's going to be really hard for anybody in the WNBL to stop her. I mean, I know our producer Mary was talking to Lara McSpadden. She's like, hey, looking forward to just stepping up to Hanju. And she's like, I just don't know what to do because she is so big. So it's like you're going to have to throw the rule book out the window. You're going to have to try different ways. Really, the best way to stop Hanju at this point, somehow stop people feeding her the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's with any big, right? Like any dominant big, that's your first point of call is you got to really put that pressure on, try and, I don't know, I think you get a front, but yeah, it's that on-ball pressure to try and stop those passes. But, I mean, we've talked about more of a global game and a global impact. Just a little insight. So we've got 800 ticket sales from the Chinese community coming to the game tonight in Adelaide. So it's an absolute sellout. It's the hottest ticket in town. And yeah, so we put a flyer out with a QR code that was delivered to the Chinese consulate. We've got VIPs coming out of our VIP area. Like it's she's amazing on the court, but her impact off the court and for the league and the eyeballs and the different audience that it brings to the WNBL, but also every club that she visits. It's a bit of we're seeing a bit of the LJ, I guess, phenomenon, but with the Chinese community, which is really exciting.
Yeah. I just touching on that, during the Asia Cup, every game that the Chinese national team played, it was a packed house, and those fans, they were loud.
I remember when the World Cup was in Sydney, we went to I was at the gold medal match of the US versus China, and the crowd that was there was insane. Like everyone was basically there supporting China. Like it was beautiful. And then like with the Hani thing, at the end of the day, you can't teach size. You can't teach anyone to be that tall. And she's taught herself to shoot the three. So like, push her out all you want. She likes shooting the three. Like I remember one game a couple of seasons ago in New York, she subbed on with Sabrina Ionescu and they shot her and Sabrina, and you can see her saying to Han, if you get the ball, just shoot it. Like it didn't matter where she caught the ball. They wanted her to shoot it and they're all going to cheer for her. And I think it's kind of nice at the flip side now where she had Sabrina Ionescu at New York. She's now with Amy Atwell, who is kind of the Australian Sabrina Ionescu, self-proclaimed best shooter in the league. Like, you could double Han, do whatever, but are you then going to leave Amy Atwell and Ali Wilson and everyone else in that team who can shoot the three open? Like, you push her outside the three. Okay, now your big is outside the key and Annalie Maley can penetrate. And then what are you going to do on the offensive end when Hanju's standing in the key ready to swat? Like, how do you get around that? Like, maybe they need to try and foul her out of games, but she's pretty good at not.
Yeah, it's really going to be tough for any team coming up against Perth with that sort of size mismatch. It just is. And also the versatility that Hanju's got. That being said, there's also a whole lot of other really interesting imports in the league. One of the ones that I've been really interested in watching play throughout has been Kadi Sissoko. She's been a real impact player for Canberra, and the ability to now have Zatina back on the court, giving us some other options where teams have to start looking at who do we need to cover. It's going to give her opportunities. And we've seen Kadi just sort of come in and at those clutch times drop the points that are necessary to get the momentum back with Canberra.
Yeah, Kadi Sissoko is an interesting player. You know, when you think about just a very lengthy, do-it-all kind of forward, especially someone that has the ability to post, has the ability to drive, has the ability to knock down spot-up jumpers, but also, when needed, has the length to make things difficult on the defensive end. I was definitely interested when I heard that she was actually going to Australia, just given how strong her roots and her career is more on the European front, you know, obviously with France and then playing in other teams. So I think, you know, she's probably trying to get some of that Australian physicality to add to her repertoire and her resume. So no, I'm definitely interested when you think about with like having teams with her and Alcuzo and Potts, just the size and length that the Caps can provide. I'm very interested to see like how it all comes together, especially in that second half of the season.
Yeah, she was recruited heavily by Coach Paul Goris. So after she played against him at the Atlanta Dream, he described her as a unicorn. So all of those things that you just said that she could do, it's heavily recruited by Gorry. So he knows his stuff. And I think, we've touched on a lot about them coming to develop and be better players, but who doesn't want to come to Australia in the summer? That's the other part, right? Like there's connections, there's basketball, but then there's just the opportunity to come to Australia and experience this country that you've probably heard about, but, never experienced. So I think we got lucky with that as well.
Trust me, Kerry, I wish I was in Australia right now. In the Northeast United States during winter. Sign me up for a summer in the land down under.
Look, there is someone I want to talk about. We haven't really seen her take the floor, but she comes with a lot of credit to her game. That's Alyssa Peely. She was injured very early on in the piece. So, Alf, you might be able to give us a little bit of a view into Alyssa's game.
Yeah, sure. So, especially coming into the WNBA, Alyssa Peely developed a reputation as just that strong, physical, low post force that, can really post up and make things difficult for opposing matchups and, be someone that can get offenses easy twos when you have just that size mismatch. But then once you saw her be able to stretch the floor at Utah, I think that was the thing that really made teams say, go, wow, okay, this can be a very special player. And her W career has been a little bit up and down, obviously starting with the Minnesota Lynx, but then, getting waived and then getting a chance with the LA Sparks with her coach in Lynn Roberts. I think she's also in that mold of, WNBA players that are looking to get that extra experience in Australia, because right now with a player like Alyssa Peely, she's more on that fringe kind of, okay, she would need like a big performance, a big boost to kind of, help her WNBA chances. But I think when you look at what Alyssa Peely can do as just a strong, versatile player, I think when you look at a team like Geelong that has another strong, versatile import in Mackenzie Holmes, they're looking to see like what can they do with that.
Yeah, you look at some of these other impact imports. I think one of the ones that I think has probably got everybody talking is Megan McConnell. She's been almost unstoppable in a lot of cases. So how much of a contribution do you think she's been making to, where Bendigo's sitting on the ladder at the moment?
She definitely has. She's even had more of an opportunity, even though they don't play the same position. I believe she's stepped up more in the absence of Mariana Tolo as well, just these last few games. But definitely have witnessed that impact and seen her. And I think that makes a great player, right? When there's an opportunity and a gap to step into for your team and you're able to do that, she's just showing that quality player that she is.
Really like her game. Like, she's just so much energy, and in that point guard spot, I think especially Australian point guards, typically they're a lot more, Jade Melbourne being the exception, they're a lot more level-headed. Like, we're used to that distribute first, pass first, get your bigs involved, which is a lovely game. But seeing Megan kind of just bounce around the court, like, she's everywhere, she's doing everything. It was heartbreaking seeing her this season getting that moment in the WNBA and then immediately getting that injury. But there's so much there. I think there's so much potential in her that I would be shocked if she didn't get picked up this season, whether it is by Phoenix again or by one of the expansion teams. Like, she offers so much on both ends because she's the exact same player on both ends, just exciting, disruptive. She's like a little Energizer bunny, like she's bouncing off the walls. And I think some days you see the real highs of that, like the game against Flames the other week, you saw just her pop off and be incredible. But then there are some lows, but that's what comes with developing and being a young, less experienced player. But I just think she's been great so far.
For sure. I like the definition that M gave on Megan McConnell in terms of bouncy, all over the floor doing the things. Because when you think about her family and, her brother on the NBA side, TJ McConnell, he kind of does a lot of some of those similar things for his team. So, maybe it's a shared genetic trait to be pesky on the floor as basketball players. But no, I think Megan McConnell, what you're seeing from her as a point guard, being able to get to the rim, being able to pass, also averaging a steal a game, showing some tenacity and effort on the defensive end. I think that's the type of player you need to kind of help an Isabel Borlase, just to get more bodies that are really contributing and helping Bendigo that is, looking to get back to the grand final.
And we've also been lucky to have some imports who've hung around for quite some time as well. One of the ones that stands out for me has been, I think it's 3-4 seasons, is Nicole Munger with Canberra. I mean, there's a player who's just consistent. She really brings the game. She's also hung around for NBL 1 as well. So she's got a lot of experience in the Australian style of play. Alf, from your perspective, how do you see Nicole's game and also just generally as a player?
I think when you look at how Nicole Munger has been for the UC Caps, definitely a quality supporting guard, just someone that you need to really help out on the floor when you're dealing with someone like Jay Melbourne being the primary facilitator, just having someone to really play off of that. And, what Nicole Munger's done for years, one thing that I think she's been pretty good at is rebounding. And I think that's something that, a lot of guards tend not to really provide on the floor. And I think that's just an added layer to, her ability to hustle, her ability to make plays that just, contribute to winning. And now when you talk about a UC Caps team that is getting all of these players back, you add someone like Nicole Munger to that mix. It's really interesting to see, like, okay, how is this going to pan out? But no, you mentioned, Nicole Munger being in the WNBL for so many years. I mean, I think that's also another, success story of the WNBL, where you have someone that's come and has, stayed, and that's kind of been her second home in a sense.
And Em, you've been involved in the NBL 1 as well, and you've seen Nicole Munger playing up close and personal. So what's your take on her as an import and what she brings to the WNBL?
I think what the most impressive thing is about her is she's just an amazing person as well. And then we see her, unfortunately, I've seen her too many times go off against our NBL 1 teams. But she is the star in NBL 1. Like, she's who you want to go and see. Like, she does everything at such a high level. Like, the rebounding is pretty much unstoppable. Watching her tape against my team's little dagger to the heart whenever she gets a rebound, because she just runs in and grabs the ball. Like, it's not rocket science. Like, she just runs to the ball and grabs it. And then, like, you see the flip in the WNBL where she isn't that star player, but if you watch both of those games, even though it's different roles, she's doing the same things. She's hitting the dagger corner threes. She's still pulling up in the mid-range and hitting it in your face. Like, she's a defensive menace. Like, I was lucky enough to have Lauren Nicholson the past couple of years scouting for her, and seeing that matchup is just so good. Like, the defense from both of them, and Munger's just gritty. Like, it's so funny that she is an import because she plays so much like an Aussie. And I think Newcastle will say that she is an Aussie now. They've very much adopted her. But, like, it's so interesting that even it's two contrasting roles, it's the same Munger, which I just think is super impressive to do.
Yeah, there's no question. Like, if you've been down to Canberra to a game at the AIS, whenever she's there, she's playing, she hits some of those shots, that crowd goes off. They absolutely love her. She's somebody that's, it's almost like she's going to be yet another one of the imports that's come to Australia that's just going to be here for an awfully long time, even potentially beyond playing career. Okay, so there is another player that we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about it because it's a Sydney player as well, and that's Unique Thompson. Unique's been playing in the NBL 1 as well. She was there on the floor with LJ for the Albury Bandits. She's been one of those players that's really built a lot of depth in her game in the NBL one, and then made the move to the WNBL, and she's been contributing significantly for the Flames. Interestingly enough, one of the things we learnt from when her mother was over here is that Unique is apparently a very shy person off the court. Absolutely not on the court. We were at a game and her mother was there and she was getting right into it. So, this is a player who's really bringing a lot to the table. First of all, Alf, I want to hear from you, but then I also want to hear from you, Emma and Kerry, about Unique, because she does have a very interesting history with Australian basketball. So,
Unique Thompson's definitely not a stranger to Australia basketball. You mentioned playing in the NBL 1 for so many years, also being NBL 1 MVP. I believe it was for NBL 1 North. I think, when you look at a player like that, that's, really developed in Australia, but then also developing in Russia as well. I think you're looking at a player that's gotten experience in probably two places where basketball is definitely physical and definitely gritty, and she brings a lot of that when you think about just her frame, like a strong, physically imposing player that is, hustling on the glass, that's, strong in the low post, and will definitely block your shot and force turnovers and will be animated about it, which is so interesting to hear that she's relatively shy on the court, because watching Unique Thompson, that was never the vibe that I got. So no, I definitely have been a fan of hers and have been following her for a little bit, even some of the stuff that she did on the NBL 1 scene. And then when you look at the Sydney Flames team, she's been a big contributor for them, especially with, some of the hurdles that they're facing. But, she's definitely been helping a Sydney team. It's really her and, Lauren Nicholson that's kind of helping all of that be put together. So, I'm definitely a fan of Unique's game.
I'm going to give you a different perspective. My daughter is 6 years old. Unique is one of her favourite players to watch because she's so pretty and she's really good at basketball. So it's cool. We talk about the skill and what they bring to the game and on the court, but she's a personality as well. I'm really shocked to hear that she's shy, because she's certainly not shy on social media either. Loves to show off her fits, loves to show off all the things. And when I messaged her to tell her about my daughter, she messaged right back and she said, "Can't wait to see you guys in Adelaide." And when I got to meet her in Adelaide, she was great. So again, we're getting these amazing players on the court, but they're bringing so much off the court as well. And Unique Thompson does that. So, to have a number one fan in Lauren Jackson and her boys, she must be doing something right.
Oh, yeah. Now, Em, you would have seen her play up close and personal in the NBL 1.
She's just good. There's I don't know what else to say. She's just good. You throw her on NBL 1, she'll go get 30 points. You throw her on in the WNBL, you'll get 30 points. I know she got drafted. She got drafted as the 19th pick in the 2021 draft. She was drafted ahead of Dejanay Carrington, which I thought was interesting. But same draft class as Charlie Collier, who came over and played last year. And it's just funny because I would say Unique's having comparatively, statistically, a better season than Charlie Collier did. And then again, so interesting you say that she's shy off the court, because seeing her mum on the baseline at those Flames games that she was at was the funniest thing, because Unique's not happy with the call. Her mum's not happy with the call. They are both
absolutely not.
The refs, they are getting into it. They had the signs for her wearing the jersey. They were just the same person. And I think it's so important, Kerry, that you said your daughter likes her because she's pretty. And that's okay to like a WNBL player because they're pretty.
She did say, and she's very good at basketball.
Yes, which is obviously more important. But I think it's nice that there's that representation of some players just want to go out and play, and that's totally fine, and they're obviously good at it. But I also think it's important that young girls in particular, can see that flip side of, I can still, if I want to wear my makeup to play, if I want to get my hair done nice to play, I can, and that's okay. I don't have to look like I'm a gym rat or whatever it is. Like, I can go on, I can look my best and then pound you on the inside and say something to your face. Like, it's nice to see the duality of that, which I just think is important to be represented as a whole to young girls. Like, I think, like, interesting that she was drafted ahead of Dejanay Carrington, where it's quite similar. Like, they want to look their best to play their best, and I love that about her game as well, because she's
look good. Yeah, look good, feel good.
Yeah.
So you guys touched on a really interesting point, because, look, there's so many imports we could keep going for ages, but one of the points that you brought up, which is really interesting, is the impact that the players have separate to the game, bringing in the fan, engaging with the kids, engaging with the fans. And I think that's one of the things that, like, elevates certain imports above others, which is their ability to connect with the fans. You know, I mean, if I go back, it's been a while now, one of the ones that did it quite early on in the piece was Asia Taylor when she was playing with the Flames. This was a play at the end of the games, you'd see the kids would all flock to her. And so that brought that whole other facet to being an import, because, you know, as a team, you expect your imports to be able to bring in the players. You want to bring in the points, to bring the other players along with them, to be able to bring up the team. One of the things that we don't talk about enough is how do they engage with the fans and bring the fans and excite the fans to want to come back to watch them play. So out of the current crop of imports that we have, apart from Unique, who else do you think brings that to the table?
I'll go first. Mackenzie Holmes. She is just a lovely human being. Like, I unfortunately didn't get to see the Flames Geelong game in person, but, like, my family were huge Seattle Storm fans. And my dad saw Mackenzie standing on the sideline, and he walked up to her and they just started chatting. And she goes, "I'm so excited. My family's coming over." She points to them in the stands. Like, Dad was asking how she likes Seattle, and she was just like, "Oh, I hope I get to go back." Like, she was just so genuine. And my parents were saying, she's just a nice person, like, which is so nice, because we get so many of the young ones coming over. And obviously a lot has changed with NIL and they're more marketable and media friendly, but they're still young. Like, well, they're my age. So, like, sometimes it's hard to, one, you're in a new country, you're away from your family, you've got expectations on you because you're an import, but being able to be approachable and just be like, yeah, I like Seattle. Like, I think that's just so nice. And, like, you have Unique, who's just a star and shows it all off, but can still interact with the fans. And then you see, like, Mackenzie, who's doing the same thing, but a more, like, girl next door kind of thing, which I just think is really nice.
Yeah, probably someone who we haven't touched on her game, but you know, the Townsville Fire the fans will get to us if I don't mention her. Lauren Cox.
Yep.
Yeah, I think she's fabulous. I think she's approachable. She's all the things, but also obviously speaking about, you know, the fact that she plays. She's an athlete with diabetes and becoming an ambassador for that and talking about that. So again, touching on that representation piece, yeah, I think Lauren Cox again has made an impact on and off the court, and that's seen her come back to Townsville for the third season. Second season,
I think, yeah.
And they and in Townsville in particular, they love her. She's big in the community and she does great things.
Alf?
Great. So my answer, if we can't include her, I would say would be Han, and just in terms of the marketability that she brings, but also like how much fans love Hanju. Like, even in New York, it's like, in seasons when she wasn't with the team, there would still be comments on Instagram and social media posts, "When's Han coming back? When's Han coming back?" Like, she just has a way of connecting with communities. But on the Mackenzie Holmes part, I like how M phrased that, because one of my notes, and I kid you not, was, for team early in the Geelong brand, Holmes has been that kind of star player to help continue ingratiate with the community. And, I had no idea that Em was going to bring that point up. But, I think like a player like Mackenzie Holmes is really like what you want, especially early on, and trying to really build that identity for the team. So I think you can add a player like Mackenzie Holmes to that list as well. And I think, I like what Kerry brought up about Lauren Cox, because like learning just those points that she made there, that's just the beauty of having so many great people and great players come from other parts of the world to Australia and really, become part of the scene.
I think that's one of the facets of the imports that people forget. You really do want to have the imports to not only help win games and be impact players, but to also bring in the fans, help build the fan base of the team, and also get the team more widely recognised outside of the basketball community as well. That hopefully they'll bring something with them. Now, Hanju's obviously done that, because when she arrived in Australia, there was a lot of media coverage that you normally don't see. And I know that a couple of the interviews I've seen with her, she's really quite humble, but also she's very engaging. You listen to her speak, and it's like, okay, this is someone who comes across as a sort of person you could easily just walk up and have a conversation with. So it's one of those facets of being an import, I think, that people do kind of forget, because there's such a focus on, we've got to get the W, and that part of it just gets forgotten a little bit. So it's good that we get to touch on that. So, guys, look, I really want to thank you for, first of all, Em, for starting so early, particularly after a big night. Right. Kerry, you've had stuff going on for yourself. You've had, it's all good stuff, obviously, but, it's an early Sunday morning in Adelaide. Alf's got the afternoon in below zero temperature in our measurements. So it's definitely been an interesting one. And we throw in our technical challenges as well. So, but it's been a lot of fun, right? I think that's the best part. It's been a lot of fun talking about these amazing athletes that come to the WNBL. We will be releasing this podcast just before the new year. So I also want to take this opportunity to say Merry Christmas to you guys. Happy New Year. Hope you have a really great break. And I'm really hopeful that, everybody has a great 2026 and we get to see the back end of a fantastic WNBL season.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks a lot, Paul.
Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you get our latest pod. And we really appreciate if we could get a like and a review so we can extend the reach to more listeners. And don't forget, follow us on Instagram, Twitter and LinkedIn.